Hello all you fine beautiful people, I'm back here once again with another video, and today this is something a little different for me. I, I've been toying with this concept of this whole dinner for five thing. I mentioned it on a live stream a while ago, and I've just been going about, well, how would I do this? And so I thought, you know what, I'll film the first one, and I'll just see how it goes. If you're new to the channel, I have to say though, hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, click the little bell down below so you don't miss anything. And yeah, so I'll just get right into it. Now, I know I've heard in the past people said if you could have dinner with three people, five people, who would it be? And I kind of thought about this and I thought I'd take my own little take on this. Now, here's going to be kind of my idea for it. My first video is just going to be five at random, but then in the future, I'd like to open this up to other topics like five bass players, five guitar players, five drummers, uh, alive or I preferably right now alive. I might open this up later to ones who have passed and who I would like to have dinner with. But I thought, you know what, for this first one, I'd really like to do this and just see how it goes. So I thought, you know what, I thought I'd just pick five kind of people in music that I'm like, you know what, those are people I would really love to pick their brain, whether it be recording, guitar playing, singing, whatever. Just five people, kind of at random, but I kind of had my top four right off the bat. I knew the first four that I'd love to invite to this, and it's just a hypothetical. It's a fun video. So anyway, let's get into it. My first choice, anybody who knows me knows I'm a huge, huge Pink Floyd fan. They're the band that got me into music. I've told the story countless times where it's like I heard Shine On You Crazy Diamond and I was just completely mind blown at David Gilmour's guitar tone. And so the first person I would like to have at this would be David Gilmour, because he's a guy I would love to pick his brain, because he's just an interesting guitar player, melody wise. I just everything with the music sounds so clean. Uh, and he's written some really iconic solos, riffs, but also the production side. Like, I'd like to get his brain on kind of some of his production stuff. And he's gone on interviews and said he's used nothing except what he's found in a record store. Like, he said it's really not hard to duplicate my tone, but everything he plays just seems like that should be so easy. But then you break it down, you're like, wow, that's not easy. There's a lot of stuff that goes into this. So that would be my first choice. My second choice is actually somebody David Gilmour discovered, and I discovered last year because I reacted to a video, David Gilmour and Miss Kate Bush. I have to say, I've enjoyed all the songs I've listened to so far by Kate Bush, and she seems like a very interesting person, like, to talk with, because I don't think there's anybody I've ever seen that could just set a mood for a song and have that mood changed. And like, man, it's interesting. Like, even listening to Wuthering Heights, you get that very, she can be like that Wicked Witch of the West, very jealous, devious. And then you get times where she sings so beautiful, like a Moment of Pleasure is a song I really like by her, pulling out the pin, which tells a story from a different perspective. And her music just always seems fun, it always seems fresh. And she's one of these people that I always thought, you know what, that would be somebody I'd love to talk to, because she's done it, not only written her own stuff, she's produced it, she's pretty much done it all, choreographed her own music videos, I believe. So she knows what she's doing in a studio and all this stuff, and has worked with great people. Anyone who works with David Gilmour, I think, has to have some level of talent, and Kate Bush to me is like amazing, especially after hearing the success. I'm really happy for her with the success of Running Up That Hill, from Stranger Things, because that is such a great song. That's the song that I first heard by Kate Bush, and I'm like, that is an amazing song. Number three for me was, I was kind of like, well, I need a singer. I have two singers in here. I'm like, well, who do I add? Somebody else. And somebody who's done something different. And the one name that kept popping up where it's like, I would love to meet that guy and really even have dinner with him and discuss music. Aryan Anthony Lucasen, Aryan Star One, I think people said Guilt Machine, countless side projects, solo career. The guy's interesting because I'm always like, you know what? He's written so many operas, worked with so many different singers. Seems to have a very stable band behind him, but the singers he's worked with and some of the stories he comes up with, I'm always like, you know what? That guy knows what he's talking about, and he plays all this stuff, all multi instrumentalist. And I always thought, you know what? This guy seems so cool. And then you see pictures of him, and he looks like a hippie. So it's like, I just love to meet this guy. Kind of pick his brain musically. Like that's something with all these first three I'd really love to do, is just pick their brain musically, production wise, why maybe he did this here. It's something I've kind of really thought about more and more and more. And I'm like, you know what? When I started coming up with the list, he was one of the first names that came up because the guy just intrigues me. He's so interesting. And I'm always like, you know what? That'd be a great guy to have over for dinner and just pick his brain. Number four for me is another person I discovered a lot in the last year since I started doing this. And I thought, you know what? One of the most unique people you could probably bring to this, who is just peace, love, everything, would be Mr. John Anderson of Yes. He is one of those guys I always picture, like, anytime there'd be like any disagreement or anything, John Anderson would be like, peace, love, yay, rainbows. I I have to say, John Anderson is a guy who I bet you has tons of stories. And that's another thing I thought about with this was people who could probably tell a lot of stories about their time in music. And John Anderson, I think, probably has a whole plethora of stories he could tell. He seems like a genuine, and he seems like a very genuine, nice guy. Like, I don't think I've heard anybody say anything really negative about John Anderson. It's really interesting. And the more I've listened to Yes and I've discovered John Anderson, he's a great singer. Like, there's one thing, like, I'll say two guys that I'll say voices have really stayed almost kind of the same. Uh, would be John Anderson. I know David Gilmour's changed a little bit, but he can still do a lot of different things. John Anderson's pretty much sounds exactly the same as he did back in probably 1974. It's amazing. I haven't seen anything of him recently, but out of everything I've seen, like even back as far as 2003, which is almost 20 years ago, surprisingly, sounds fantastic. Now for number 5. This was really hard, was coming up with the fifth person. Because there's so many people, well, do I want to put him in here? Do I want to do him? And I thought about it, and I really sat down and thought really long and hard about this. This is pretty much what delayed this video for quite a while. I thought, you know what, number 1, how could you not include the great Jimmy Page? Like, that would be a guy I'd love to sit down, pick his brain. Because he has pretty much, I think, done it all, seen it all, partied it all. He'd be a guy with a lot of great stories. I remember seeing a documentary piece. They were talking about Jimmy Page, and all of a sudden, he just puts on the song Rumble by Link Wray. And you could just tell how it just took him back. Almost it felt like to the first time he heard it. He's like, dang, dang. And it's like, wow. And I thought, you know what? Imagine the stories Jimmy Page could tell about touring with Led Zeppelin, probably all the shenanigans they got into. That's right, I said it, shenanigans. But it's really interesting. Jimmy Page always struck me as a guy who it's kind of a shame isn't in a band. I've said this in previous videos right now, where I love to see him, even if it's just doing studio albums, not touring, just do studio. Because I bet you could sell like 2-3 thousand records just, or 2-3 million records just off Jimmy Page alone. Just throw the Led Zeppelin sticker on it and say guitarist for Led Zeppelin, and you get people to buy it. Uh, kind of do some solo album stuff. I'm sure he could find anybody would want to work with Jimmy Page. And he could probably have his pick of who he wants to work with. But man, I thought for this, you know what, this would be an actually really unique group of people. Like, people you might not expect me to put in here, but I thought about Jimmy Page. Like, he's a guitar player that kind of has that old school kind of, I think, feel for it. Like, even as in the 70s, everything got a little proggy and everything, and he did get proggy to an extent, but I think that blues rock bass Led Zeppelin was always still at the heart and soul of his guitar playing, and probably what he actually really loved. But anyway, that's my thoughts. That's my 5 people. Well, 5. Keep the other hand down. People might get confused, think it's 10. But 5 people that, if I could have dinner with these 5 people, that'd be amazing. And I really wanted to keep it right now to people who are alive. Because if I open it up to people who are deceased, that throws a whole nother wrench into this. And I thought, you know what? And I have different topics I thought about. 5 guitar players, 5 of the biggest egos in music was another one that I discussed, and that got a few very interesting ideas out of that one. But I thought, you know what, this is good here. Yeah, so tell me, do you guys like this? If not, I'll stop it right away. But I always thought it was a very interesting concept. Everyone talks about, oh, I'd love to have dinner with these 3 people from history, which that could be a whole other thing. I could open it up to whole other parts of this. It really is an interesting series. But anyway, that's my thoughts and opinions. If you're new to the channel, hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, click the little bell down below so you don't miss anything. This is me here once again. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is me here signing out. Peace.